Well, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us right here on the bottom line. On the bottom line, we say business at the speed of thought. My name is Kwesi Efri, and let me especially welcome you to the year 2023. This is the very first official time that we are coming live on screen as the bottom line. We've started on Good Morning Ghana, we've started on other shows, but for the bottom line, we say a Happy New Year to you, and we pray that this year will be an exciting year for you. We pray that this year will be a year of blessing for you. And of course, as a business platform, we pray that your businesses will flourish and your businesses will grow. So we promise that this year we will give you the best of the business stories that come your way, whether politically, whether economically, socially, educationally. So far as it has something to do with business, and especially employment, we bring it your way. You can trust the entire production team, from the head of the production team, Eugenia Akofa-Kumi, Winston Taki, Joel Krampa, and the entire team. We promise to bring you the best of the bottom line in the year 2023. We start with tonight, and tonight we are talking about the domestic debt exchange program of government. Right from around early December 2022, which is last year, you saw the kind of challenge that the country had been plunged into, economic challenge, and how the government, through its negotiations with the IMF, a lot of people call it the Bretton Woods institution, has been trying to find domestic endogenous solutions to the problems that we have, to mix it with all of the other, whether exogenous or however you want to call it, to be able to solve the economic challenges that we have as a country. We'll do that, and then we'll talk to you a little about how to start fresh in the whole of this year, because I've told you that we are beginning the year afresh. Now, let me come to the screen, and I'm going to be presenting to you, giving you a trajectory of what has happened so far. And this is on the back of the fact that just today as we are talking to you, the Minister of Finance on his Twitter page and, of course, on other social media platforms have announced to the entire population of Ghana that the domestic debt exchange program, which was supposed to have ended today, has been extended to the end of the month. It's been met with a lot of agitations. It began with agitations from labor unions, and it came up to agitations from individuals. And now banks are even inclusive. And we are hearing that the Ministry of Finance has said that it is extending the domestic debt exchange program to the end of the year. So I'll give you the trajectory of it. And we begin with what we have for you. This is a touchscreen analysis that we are doing for you. On the 5th day of December 2022, that's the very first time we heard about the domestic debt exchange program. And it says, government had launched a domestic debt exchange program as part of efforts to bring public debt back on a sustainable path. Now, take note that this has happened in other countries, and to be precise, there is an experience from Jamaica, which we are going to present to you in the course of the discussion. And so IMF has a trajectory of this sort, that they have gone into a country, Greece, for example, some time back, was plunged into an economic crisis, and they had to go through programs like this to be able to restore their macroeconomic and microeconomic indicators. And this is where we are as a country. Where we have been plunged into, we need to be able to make sure that through domestic activities and through external activities, we are able to streamline our fiscal policies. And of course, monetary policies are also involved. And so it is not just an issue of the Ministry of Finance, but that of the Bank of Ghana is also involved. If you have monitored the economic challenges we have as a country, Bank of Ghana has tried through several means, and especially the Monetary Policy Committee's rates that they put out every time. It's gone from 20 basic points to about 50 that we are talking about now. So this is it. So as it is a key requirement to allow Ghana's economy to recover as fast as possible and on long financial assistance from the IMF. Well, the program invited holders of approximately 100, and you need to take note of it, 137.3 billion Ghana cedis of principal amount outstanding of certain domestic notes and bonds issued by the government of Ghana, ESLA PLC or Dacha Trust PLC, to exchange their eligible bonds for a package of new bonds. Let's get to the next page. It says this means that the government is swapping, and for those of you who didn't understand what the domestic debt exchange program meant, and a lot of us reporters who had been asking the Bank of Ghana, the Ministry of Finance, the Economics, and everybody questions were asking when was going to be the time of the external bonds as well. And we were asking a number of questions. A lot of us didn't understand what the domestic bonds meant, but we give you an explanation here. Even as of now, lots of people don't understand. We say this means that the government of Ghana was at the time and is still swapping the existing agreement with the bondholders with a new one, with new interest rates and a new timeline. New interest rates and a new timeline. Certain dates, and I'm going to be reading that to you, had been given. That, for example, if you're a pensioner and you had used all your pension money to buy some bonds and it was going to mature by the end of this year, or by the end of last year, 31st day of December 2022, you were not going to get the interest and the profits that you thought you would be making on that bond. But some extensions had been made. You are now going to swap that bond and receive it in the future. And this is what it meant. So, for instance, existing domestic bonds as of December 1, 2022, will be exchanged for a set of 4 new bonds maturing in, first of all, 2027, 2029, 2032, and 2037. Therefore, if you held a government bond which would mature in 2025, you will earn 0 interest in 2023. So if yours wasn't ending in 2022, as we had earlier on stated, but it was ending in 2025, for example, it means 2025 you are going to earn nothing, 0, zilch on that. And then in 2027, you're going to get some earnings on it. 2032, you're going to get some earnings on it as well. Were people in for this? Were pensioners in for this? Were bankers in for this? Were everybody who had believed in the economy and put their monies in the economy in for this? But the Ministry of Finance tells us that we are in an economic crisis, financial crisis. We all needed to tighten our belt to be able to restore macroeconomic sanity or stability. And so this is the point that we had gotten to. Now, on the 23rd day of December, after several agitations, and I'm sure you remember that all of the labor unions from Ghana Registered Nurses Association, from NATS, from everywhere had come together to put out a release that no, we will resist this. And government, if you don't stand back, we are going to sit back on our chairs. If we are teaching, we are not going to teach. Ghana Medical Association, we are not going to go to the hospitals, and so on and so forth. So on the 23rd of December, after several agitations from the labor unions, government now announced the exclusion of pension funds from the domestic debt exchange program. Now, at this point, what most of us had been asking was, where was the position and the space of negotiations? What had happened to negotiations? Why did the government not speak to all of these people? Mass consultations, mass negotiations. These are major stakeholders in the economy. They bite in the economy. When they make a statement, it bites on the economy. Those of us who believe in economic signaling, when these associations make a statement, people who have invested in the economy want to take out their monies. They want to repatriate their monies. And so why do you go on such a program? Of course, to restore macroeconomic stability without consulting labor unions. Government had to now backtrack and say that, yes, we'll go into consultations with you, but we have extended the date to the end of the year. So it announced an extension of the expiration date to Friday, 30th of December 2022, and the settlement date to Friday, 6th of January 2023. So right from the beginning of this year, when work had begun, most of us began work around the 3rd of December and so on. And so people were expecting that those of us who were in the press writing and putting things in the media were going to be announcing that it has actually taken effect from that date. But what did we see? Later, it extended the expiration date from 30th December 2022 at 4 p.m. to Monday, today, the 16th day of January 2023 at 4 p.m. Today, at 4 p.m., were expecting an expiration of the domestic debt exchange program, and it now included individual bondholders. Now, individual bondholders have mounted a fierce resistance. I'm sure you've seen Senor Jose and his group and all of the people that have come together to resist and say that they are going to have a class action suit against government. This is what we have here. I'm sure if we have Senor Jose, we'll play that to you now and I'll come back to this.
Individual bondholders are already taking a hit. We're already taking a haircut. We are the ones who go out there and still pay the extra VAT that has been brought. We are the ones who still have to pay the extra, what do you call it, e-levy that we have to take. Because now, if you're at 100, you still have to pay. The increased taxes that have come, we take the hit for it. There are some of the papers that just don't make sense. Right. You take something like the ESLA bonds. The ESLA bonds are not impaired. So why do you want to punish individual bondholders who do not have adequate visibility and understanding of the economic paradigm and operations of public governance?
So, Senor Jose and a number of people, individual bondholders, have said they are resisting, they oppose categorically this action by government, and if government doesn't rescind on its decision, they are going to go to court. As simple as that. They are going to go to court to get the court force government to accede to their demand, which is to rescind its decision of including individual bondholders. Now, who are the domestic bondholders issues going to affect? It's as far as the banks are concerned, and this is some statistics that we have for you. The expected financial impact pre-tax losses for banks is $1.2 billion. Now, the dollar rate is around 1.35 if you are selling, and 1.1 if you are buying. So you can multiply it by 1.35, 11.35, and then 11.5 thereabout if you are buying. So you can multiply the 1.2 billion by that figure and see what you would get there. Liquidity shortfalls of $1.6 billion. Liquidity shortfalls of $1.6 billion. And then capital shortfall of $1.3 billion using retail exchange rate. And our source is Africa Report. That's where we got this information from. Now, some financial institutions are projected to let 40% of their workers, and this is the part that we are interested in as a bottom line, about 40% of workers of most of these financial institutions. And of course, when we say financial institutions, we are not referring to just the banks alone. We are talking about insurance companies. We are talking about microfinance companies. We are talking about the entire financial industry. Now, some of these have said about 40% of their workers would be going home. The minority in parliament, that's the NDC side of parliament, vehemently opposed this from the beginning, and they have made a statement. I'm sure we can listen to that as well.
Of this minority, that the domestic debt exchange program, in a considered view, will create extreme hardships for millions of Ghanaians and existing financial institutions and insurance companies.
In fact, I project a minimum of 5 banks collapsing if this goes ahead. Not only that, a number of banks will have to lay off staff and close some branches.
Well, as for the laying off of staff, some reports have corroborated that. But as of the banks collapsing, I'm not so sure. I don't stand to dispute that. However, the bank report suggests that they are strong enough to withstand some of these things. After the financial sector crisis some years back, when some indigenous banks had to go or to be collapsed, so to speak, by the Bank of Ghana, based on some reasons that were given, including financial malpractices, including mismanagement by the leaders of those banks, and so on and so forth. And so the banks that we have, CBG, ADB, Cowbank, and so on and so forth, are supposedly strong enough. They have to be able to withstand this, and the Bank of Ghana has to be able to back them up. However, we wait to see what's happening. Now, today, that's on Monday, this is where we are. The Minister of Finance, in a statement, said it was further extending the deadline for the voluntary exchange of domestic bonds to the 31st of January 2023. This is all the point that we have been making, that there needs to be extensive engagement. There needs to be extensive consultation. There needs to be extensive collaboration with the private sector, with the bondholders, with the labor unions, and so on and so forth. And I'll give you a case of a scenario, example, which has happened before. I told you about the case of Greece, and I told you about the case of Jamaica. Let me take you quickly through the case of Jamaica. So the government of Jamaica has been lauded for a successful completion of a domestic debt exchange program, which happened somewhere 2010 and later in 2013. They have had 2 of them. It says, as prior actions to an IMF standby arrangement SBA in 2010, and then an extended facility EFF in 2013, the government of Jamaica was required to complete voluntary debt exchanges with 100% participation from eligible creditors. Now, Jamaica's first debt exchange program, dubbed the JDE or JDX, was launched by the government on 14th January. This is about some days in 2010. And they were not able to sustain it. They got 100% participation. But sustenance for the achievement of what they were looking out for wasn't too successful. So in 2013, they had gone back. That's the JDX was designed to generate interest rates of about 3.5%. But somewhere in 2013, they had gone back to pursue another program where they had another 100% successful rate. It says the Jamaican government resisted for over a year. This is where I'm interested in. The government going to IMF, entering the negotiations with IMF, seeking money and support, funding from the IMF, and listening to the conditions of IMF, resisted for over a year the nature of the restructuring proposed by the IMF. What's the nature of the restructuring they had proposed by the IMF? Some of these domestic debt exchange programs that they have put across. And so it says, which initially involved scenarios with substantial principal haircuts. And haircuts is a key word for me here. What are we seeing in Ghana today? Are there lessons for us to draw from Jamaica? Are we getting the funding to the detriment of the local investors here in the country, even foreign investors who invest in our local economy here in the country? What exactly are we doing? Are we taking lessons from Jamaica? Are we taking lessons from Greece? And so on and so forth. So principal haircuts on domestic and global bonds. There was extensive but informal consultation. And these are the questions that I've been asking. What's the level of consultation? What's the level of engagement? What's the level of collaboration with the private sector that will make sure that everybody buys into it? And remember, what happened to e-levy? Because some people have posited that there wasn't enough consultation, enough collaboration, enough consultation, and extensive consultation, there was opposition to the e-levy, and we all know where the e-levy is. The Jamaica case says that with the informal sector, with the formal sector, they dragged the whole thing for a year and then engaged in a very extensive consultation before they actually arrived at a program. Same for the second debt exchange, which was named the National Debt Exchange Program. It also went through sustained, extensive consultation. Now the NDX, eventually succeeded, and similar to the JDX, the NDX included voluntary rolling out of government of Jamaica securities by accepting new instruments with lower coupons in the range of 75 to about 500 BPAs and extended maturities. These are details that I'll be giving to you. But the key to the strategy for both exchanges, and this is very key for me, was to convince creditors that the voluntary debt swap will be transformative on the path to public debt sustainability through improved economic growth and fiscal consolidation, thereby increasing the market value of the new government of Jamaica bonds. At the same time, these incentives have been put in place to discourage the temptation of bondholders to free ride, such as by orchestrating a reduction in the market value of the old bond post-exchange. And this is what we are talking about, that this is what needs to be done by the Ministry of Finance. Consultation, getting the assurance from your partners, and by this we mean the individual bondholders, by this we mean the labor unions, by this we mean everybody that is a stakeholder, from the top machinery of government to all of us, the lay people, the sweepers, everybody on the street. Let us understand and have 100% participation and understanding. Our big question, and we put here, my producer says, we should ask you, How can government achieve 100% approval from domestic bondholders? This will be the success of our IMF program. Ghana has gone to the IMF over 17 times. Do we have to go back to the IMF again? The big question is, how do we achieve 100% participation rate, even if it becomes voluntary? Will people understand to the point that they will be willing and ready to back and support the program to make it a success? Now, we all know Citizen Kofi, one of the rich people here in Ghana. We go on to social media, on Twitter. He says, President Addo's domestic debt exchange program is tantamount to a coup d'etat. Democracy requires discussions, engagement, not autocratic decisions and actions to unilaterally dispossess citizens of their savings. Only coupists behave as such. MPs must stop him. Gabi Asari Ochi Dakon says, 4 key issues developments here. 1, government is engaging reps of individual stakeholders, and that's the same point we've been talking about. Government should engage, and engage. Number 2, there is no credible alternative to the debt exchange program. And, well, if that's the situation, let us understand. Let everybody understand. Number 3, individual bondholders deserve much better protection than currently on offer. And that's the same case we have been talking about in Greece and in Jamaica, the case that we showed you. And number 4, there will still be some shared pain. Of course, we are in an economic crisis, and we need to share the pain. But how we go about it really matters. The big question we still come back to it is, how do we get 100% participation? That's a big question for you, the economist, the finance expert, and even for the layman on the street. I'll go on a break. When I come back, I'll have my guest seated. We'll be talking about the New Year resolutions, and of course, they will answer the question on the domestic debt exchange program. Stay with us. Right, you're welcome back from the break, and this is still the bottom line. And if you just tuned in, we are coming your way live from our studios here at Ridge in Accra. My guests are seated now, and I'll go straight to our discussions for the evening. I've told you early on that tonight, the Ministry of Finance has said that the domestic debt exchange program, which was supposed to end today, has been extended to the 31st day of January 2023. Remember that it started from the 5th of December 2022 to about 16th to 30th December, and now today, January 2016 or January 2023, 16th of January, and now it is the 31st day of January 2023. I'll come back to the studio and have seasoned finance experts and economists to do justice to our discussions tonight. What is it for you? And we asked the big question: how can we achieve 100% trust and participation in the domestic debt exchange program, like had been experienced in Jamaica in 2010 and 2013? How are we able to do that? We are in economic crisis. Are we able to move on with that? I'll introduce my guests who are already seated here in the studio. From my extreme left is Dr. Edu Entry, convener, pensioner bondholders forum. Doc, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening. Thank
I hope you're doing well.
Yeah, only you are hoping from one station to another.
It's not been easy.
Yes.
It's already been easy. And Doris Ahiate is a fellow, Chartered Institute of Bankers. You know her very well here on Metro TV. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
A pleasure to be here.
I hope you're doing well as well.
Very well, thank you.
And of course, Dr. Richmond Frimpong is an investment advisory consultant. He is a friend of Metro TV as well, and author of Good Money Habits in Bad Economic Times. I'm sure I would have some small time to ask him about his latest books and New Year Fresh Start. Doc, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening.
I remember one of our videos where you had made an emphatic statement about how much you need to have in your account after a certain number of months, and the kind of exclamation I had made. And I saw it on a number of platforms. I don't know if you saw that.
I think it did trend.
how people prepare. You still have to promise us on air that we will still have the task screen analysis and play to people how to prepare for the rest of the year 2023.
It will happen.
Thank you very much, Doc. So tonight we are looking at the domestic debt exchange program, and let me begin with you, Dr. Edwentry. How has it been for you? You are the convener for Pensioner Bondholders Forum.
Yeah, I think we started all this about getting the pensioners who are having government bonds exempted from the exchange. That's basically our message, and it's based on the premise that government decided to exempt pension funds from the exchange so that they don't impair the incomes that people will be taking on retirement. The idea is that you don't want people to go on retirement and become a burden on society. At least there should be something that they can rely on to care for themselves, especially their old age where you have a number of multiplicity of diseases coming to you left and right, and your medication is a challenge. So government said, I would not touch. When Labour demanded that, look, if you put this under the exchange program, it would severely affect people who will go on retirement. Then we say, well, if government has accepted that, it's the same thing that applies to people who are already on pension and have received their money, added some whatever investment they have made, and they didn't put it at any other place than to lend it to government. So don't impair that too, so that they too they can live a life that is not will be a burden on other people. So basically, this is
Government says it's only swapping your bonds and not taking it away from you.
So if it's swapping is the same level of conditions, that's a different matter. But if we are giving a pensioner a bond that will pay no coupon for 1 year, then you ask yourself, how does the pensioner buy her drugs? So that 1 year, it means we wouldn't have anything to live on. And that is a challenge. That's not a swapping matter. If it's swap and, for example, you have extended a period, but other conditions are okay, then that's a different matter.
So let me come to you, Doris. Where we are as a country, we admit that we are in an economic crisis, and so some of these activities may be a necessary evil. But from where Doc is sitting and from where we have all experienced, absolute lack of consultation, absolute, I don't want to use the word mismanagement, but no extensive consultation with the people that matter. But here we are, we need the 100% trust and participation of these groups. For bankers, you have put out some data that you are going to lose huge amounts of monies in millions of dollars and even in local currency. Are we going to be able to get there as a country?
That's the question that I believe is at the core of this exchange program. It's really the question that we are all seeking an answer to, and it's difficult to find one. From where I sit, we think about the fact that the private sector is the key source of financing for the public sector. And now we are in a situation where the public sector has to pursue this debt exchange program, which in essence is going to significantly incapacitate the private sector with the banking sector at the forefront of it. We're talking about revenue loss, huge losses of profit before tax, out of which they would have paid tax revenue to the government. And then you talk about job losses and its implication for the wider economy. So you ask yourself, if we were successful and we are able to get 100%, like you're saying, or even 80% success rate, and the private sector, led by the banking sector, is crippled, the banking sector has lost the trust which underscores money creation, the money creation function of the banking industry, then beyond 2023, what is going to happen to the economy? In the short term, you probably may be getting something, meeting certain KPIs or targets, but in the medium to long term, will this be sustainable? I guess I'm asking you a question as well out of this. So,
Yeah.
and talking about consultation, it brings me to the point where earlier on today in conversations with colleagues, we are asking that we've had a scenario where a solution is crafted and it's presented, and then the civil service says no, then the pensioners say no, then the individual bondholders say no. And so you have different pockets of people coming up with, if you like, objection or alternate recommendation. What if let's say that we miss the first step of consulting and co-creating the solution together? Is it too late now to go back? Should we not hasten slowly so that we are finding a solution that is viable and sustainable in the long term? These are the thoughts that I have about the program.
Let me come to you now, Doc, and let me also say that he's the Executive Secretary of Financial Literacy Africa. And let me begin my questions to you from that point. You are trying to expand financial literacy or knowledge, especially for the lay people, to have financial inclusion, for people to save more, for people to engage in purchasing bonds and so on and so forth. This should come as a setback to you.
I mean, yes, it's a very difficult time to be in. And really, if you look at the side of government and the side of the private sector, everybody is feeling very uncomfortable with this. Switch into government for a moment and see the situation they find themselves. They are running against time to secure a bailout. And so it's almost as if they are in a very tight corner. But at the same time, switch into also the private sector, even the individuals, and then feel that over some time, I think from 2019 to date, the struggle, the challenge, the genuine impairment of disposable income. And out of all that, they struggle to try and put something aside with a certain trust that is going to cushion them even in times of difficulty. Then all of a sudden, they too are feeling that the little they had put aside, they are losing almost everything. And so on both sides, it's looking critical. So I think everybody has an interest in ensuring that we all win together. I think what is lost in this conversation is how we can jointly sit together and navigate our way out together so that we all win. That is what is missing. Now, the danger in not doing this, and back to your question, is we have come from a very far point of getting people to even appreciate the culture of savings and the culture of investment. The entire financial ecosystem is under threat if we don't navigate this terrain very well. And if you are not very careful, we would probably lose out on what we are trying to save. And so I think we can't afford to lose any. And so if there has been an extension, then maybe we have to begin the reconstruction of the things we probably missed, so that all in all, jointly, the individual can win, the private sector can win, and ultimately government can win. This morning I said that if we are not careful, both sides will lose. We will lose the macroeconomic stability we are trying to save, and we would also lose the financial ecosystem that is also holding the stability to a certain extent. And if we are not careful, this whole thing that is running is going to eat our macroeconomic stability the same way culture eats strategy for breakfast.
But is it the case that we have chewed the meat and left the bone? So what is it? Where we are now as a country that we have to get to the point of, and I was going to come back to you to ask about, on the same point, consultation, e-levy. We had e-levy. Some of us thought that it was a very innovative program which could rake in some revenue. But due to extensive consultation, again, we had it met with a very severe opposition. And e-levy, as of now, we can conducively say that it wasn't successful.
That's correct. That's correct. So it's painful that it's almost as if we are repeating the same challenges we were faced with e-levy. E-levy, great idea, but again, it's really not about the idea. It's about how it's embraced by all. And the way things are looking, you can have a very great idea, but if the people who would see to its actualization and implementation do not buy into it, your idea will be nothing, and you are going to come back to square one. And so this was also a genuine test. But sometimes the pressure of the bailout, the pressure of looking at the challenges the economy is facing, sometimes make us assume a lot of things. And I'm sure that is what has brought us to this point. But the good thing is that we still have some time. We still have some window. At least when today ended.
Is there a headway?
I think so. It will cost us more to achieve it than if we did it earlier. However, there is still some way out if we can still sit down and see what we can do.
Doris, is there a headway? I mean, we've come through e-levy. We've come through several other programs of this sort, and we are here now with IMF, and we are still going through the same thing. We're having pensioners say no.
Individual bondholders are also saying
Saying
no.
no.
So my point is that imagine that you are traveling from here to, say, Navrongo, and you are in so much haste that you can't take time to fill your tank or inflate your car tires, do the basic maintenance. You are in a hurry and you hit the highways. And then somewhere beyond Kumasi, in the middle of nowhere, your tires all give up and you run out of fuel. You would have to now come back with a gallon to try to get fuel to get moving. I'm just using this analogy to highlight the need for us to take the time to do the needful, even when we are in a hurry. In strategy, oftentimes we find ourselves in the analogy that I just showed. And while we may have missed the initial step of consultation, because you see, we are losing time the more we create, present, and then one party or stakeholder says, no, I can't take this. As opposed to let's all sit in a room. Let's create this solution together. Because I was listening to Mr. Pienim the other day, and his position is that I would have been happy to contribute to salvage the economy. And we have many people that would be in similar position. But it's how we go about earning that commitment and contribution from them so that they feel like we are owning this together and we are creating it together. I think another thing I would like to see is a little more commitment on the side of the originators of the program. Because we've seen, for example, that public sector wages has gone up in the same time that households are trying to cut down, cut corners, take things off their budgets in order to survive the time that we are in. We've also seen that while private sector is sending some employees home and they are looking for alternative
And we hear
ways.
that the banking sector as well, you're going to send
Yes.
some, about
And
40% of
insurance.
it. Is that the case?
Yes, I mean, if your cost, you can only operate at a certain cost to revenue ratio. And if
40%
your
of
revenue
the
is
banking
going
staff?
down, you have to take that action. So we also want to see that commitment reflected from the side of the government. And I believe that there's room for cutting. I was listening to some interesting commentary on CTFM where they were highlighting the number of staff under a certain communication portfolio. And it was just quite a lot. The specialists, the directors, media rep, media advisors, all playing that function of communication. So can we streamline? And that would encourage citizens that, like Mr. Pienim, I believe, would feel like they are meeting me halfway. Let me also go the other halfway. So this is my position on it. I think we can go back to the table together and co-create the solution as opposed to be creating it from one side, presenting it, and then going back. We are losing time, more time that way.
Doc, I'll come back to ask you about how we got here and how we'll be able to come out of this. Once you say there is still a way out, even though we are racing against time. But they have both suggested that we need to meet government at certain points. And Whereas if you put yourself in your shoes as pensioners, you have a case to make. If you put yourself in the shoes of government also has a case to make. Are you ready to meet government halfway? Well, I understand that you want to picket at the Ministry of Finance. Is that the case?
Yes, that will be next week if we haven't gotten any.
They're not ready to sit with government, not ready to
No, we have asked for a meeting. Even today, I went to the ministry wanting to see whether we could meet the minister. A letter we sent to the minister last on the 11th indicated that we wanted to meet the minister. We recognize the heavy schedule that he has, but we prayed that at least he should be able to meet us before the end of the invitation period. I believe maybe because the invitation period was going to be extended, he might have considered that, but think that he has some more time within which to meet us. So we are not worried. We think that we could still have the meeting. But at the time that we're having all these discussions, the extension hasn't been announced, and we plan that if we don't hear anything from the ministry, then the old men and the old women will try and go and to the place wanting to have a discussion with the minister. So it will be a friendly visit.
Picketing, you call picketing a friendly visit?
No, to a few people, few elderly people coming to say, we wanted to have a discussion with you. You are not getting time for us. Today we have come, we think that you will be able to...
Well, I think we shouldn't get there. So if the finance minister or any of the people at the finance ministry is watching, you should be telling the minister that the elderly people, as he puts it, have decided to picket. You said next week?
Next week, Monday.
Next week, Monday, if they don't get any reply. Now that the program has been extended to the 31st of this month, at least, maybe you have to reply them and give them a date. And do you want the program to be stopped entirely, or you want the pensioners to be taken out?
This program must succeed. I've always been saying that. It's just that the channel that we are taking,
which is the pensioners.
Yes, we think that will not be successful.
But you want the individual bondholders to go on?
No, individual. They also have some rights to speak about if you didn't involve them. The whole thing that we have always been saying is the consultation that some of us did not see. Sometimes you are not part, so you wouldn't say completely no, but at least my assumption, I pick my issues from the fact that you are there and some groups comes out and say, a group comes out today and say, in this current form, I won't accept. Another time, another group comes out and say, I won't accept. My own Securities Industry Association, which I greatly love and help to establish that body, came out that we don't like it. And I think that if people say they don't like it in this form, then it means they were not involved. If you were involved and you have structured this, you don't turn around and say you don't like it. So I guess from that reaction by groups to just now you can arrive at a sound conclusion that, well, then it means they were not involved in any of these processes. Otherwise, how would they come back and say they don't accept it in this form? The insurers have come, the banking people has come, everybody is coming, so it means...
But that's why I ask that, should it be stopped entirely?
No, it can't stop
all of you are coming up to say, no, you won't allow government to pursue the program.
In its form.
So
I think nobody has said they doesn't want the government to pursue the program. I think even when I read the banking one, they say the way it is now is their problem.
So, no, from your perspective as pensioners, and of course as a doctor, in what form would you advise government to pursue this program?
If I am personally, as for the pensioners, they should be out. They are more vulnerable than the people they have exempted. You are still working. Even if you have 2 years to come on retirement, you are not as vulnerable as the person who is on sick leave. So for them, this is a different...
The labor unions should be put back to work.
I mean, if I were taking the decision, I'll consider pensioners before I consider people who are still working.
People who are still working should
Yes.
be put back to it.
No.
Is that the
I'm not saying put back, but I'm saying if you want to consider, you consider, for example, if everybody was even put in this and you left pensioners alone, you might have done something better for that vulnerable group. Everybody will grow into that group. Let us not forget. Today you are strong, so you think that that is all. You are going to grow into the group. So let us make sure that this group, which are most vulnerable amongst all the people who we are engaging to come and solve this problem, are there. So we recognize that. And of course, if there is any trouble that we have to solve in this country, the pensioners have done their part. They have worked. They have served this country. When people were not born, they were working to resolve issues. Now, if we have gotten problem, and the youth are there, why do you want to rely on the elderly? Those who have paid their dues already. I always say in my village, it may not be only in my village. At a certain point, they don't ask you to pay ensawa. Ensawa, efi, ekrasi, ensawa, ebonokrado. When it gets to time, we exempt the elderly that don't pay, even if it's 1 cedi, don't pay. Why? There's wisdom in that. The person is not doing any work. And then even when somebody is dead, we say, don't contribute. Let the people who have the strength to do our work. This is basic tradition that we have. So we are saying that those people, just exempt them. If we exempt them, that is a better approach. That look, these are people who are vulnerable. If we look at the kind of medicine people have to spend, we don't have a society that takes care of all these things, you know. And when you are growing, I always say that it's like God has sent you an import license, and that import license is only for importation of sicknesses. They are coming left and right. You stretch your arm to pick something, and you must go and find medicine to it. So these are vulnerable people that we can exempt them fully. Then you deal with the others with better terms after all this consultation. Come with better terms that is acceptable to them.
Doc, pensioners want to be taken out. Individual bondholders want to be taken out, labor unions and so on and so forth. What should be the way forward? Some of them have said that, government, you have created the mess for yourselves. And they cite examples from other countries, other neighboring countries, at least within the region of West Africa. That's, yes, the endogenous factors affected the same countries. I mean exogenous. You talk about COVID, you talk about Ukrainian-Russian war, and so on and so forth. But they managed their economy well. They managed the endogenous factors well. And so they are not at the point where we are. So you created the mess, solve it.
Well, I mean, it's a point to make, but I think we've passed that. And my understanding of the position of all the investor creditor community, either individual, direct or indirect, or even the institutional, it's not that we are against government's effort to secure the bailout, or even we just want you to fail at the debt exchange program. I don't think so. What I hear is the form it is now, take a second look at it, because it will do us all, including government, bad than good. And I think there's some wisdom in paying attention to that detail instead of narrating it as they are just against the entire program, or even they are the other side and they are probably even fighting you and they want it not to succeed. No, that's not how I see it. I think they really mean good to see that we get the management and the board approval in time so that we can have the bailout and there will be stability. However, they are saying that not in this manner. And I think that is where we have to pay attention. And really, if you look at it in the form as the term sheet currently sits, it has a danger of crashing and writing off our entire macro stability, and most importantly, the entire financial ecosystem. That is something we are all trying to save. And so I don't think we are against the program. Government is also not against the investor creditor community at all. They also can tell that it comes with some costs. But again, if we can come together and look at things from the various perspectives, there is a way out. I still believe there is a way out. And we can, if we come together, we can salvage it. I mean, Doug was speaking about the GSI, the bankers, everybody is speaking. And it's almost looking like, so where was the consensus? Because there was a time when we were beginning this whole conversation with some eminent group of people who were supposed to engage all the parties and bring everybody on board so that we could navigate jointly how we were going to get it done. So if it appears that everybody is now saying, not this way, not this form, not this way, then it's probably a form that is just new to them. It's a surprise on them. And until we all become familiar with whatever solution we are professing, it will be theirs against ours. And number one, it takes time. The more we delay in this whole conversation, the worse it gets. And the worse it gets, I mean, I don't know how long it will take us again to get to a point where people are now even not comfortable buying treasury bills. I mean, it's unheard of that people now call to ask, are we safe buying treasury bill? We shouldn't think about that. You see, so if it gets to that, then we must be careful. We must pay attention because it will take us more than double the effort we put in over the years to get to a point where people now even appreciate that we should put money aside. All over the country now, people are beginning to say it's not even safe to put money in a bank. This is dangerous. This is not what we are all looking forward to seeing as a country. And we should really pause and save this whole economy jointly. Other than that, we are going to probably pay more than what we have already lost.
I will ask one more question before I come to Doris. And the question is, of what form then should government, I mean, you have suggested that government should judge or government should consult and so on and so forth. But as it is now, we also agree that government doesn't have a lot of time. Of what form should government pursue if it is to take out pensioners, it is to take out bankers, it is to take out bondholders, individual bondholders, and so on and so forth? Or government should be able to force IMF to accept that, no, we can't include domestic debt exchange program, but still give us the money.
Well, I don't think IMF is the one telling government to, in the first place, apply this term sheet. I don't think so.
Government has to show some goodwill, some strength in managing the fiscal policy of the nation so that the IMF would be confident enough to drop the money. I mean, I'm learning. So
you have a debt to GDP that has crossed the red line.
And inflation rate has crossed it.
And you are looking for some help from a party. And the party has a line you have to correct and stay before you can access the help. And so we don't change the narrative and say, this, we are doing this because A, B, or C is asking me to do. That is not the case. So it's like going to the bank to ask for loan. If you go to the bank to ask for loan, the bank has a procedure you follow. They have a criteria that qualifies you for same. Now, if you don't qualify for that, you don't go back home and tell your wife that the bank is asking me to do A, B, or C. No. So there's something you must do. The form here, if you ask me, is that there are a number of things, but it's not even about prescribing which one. It's about we agreeing together. You see, there are several things we can do, but we don't just have to prescribe that government should do A, B, or C. What would it take government to bring the banking sector, the pensions, and everybody in the ecosystem and sit down, and government now unveils the challenges and what it is thinking. And then they can also come from the perspective they are. You may be surprised if government brings everybody to speak to what their side of the picture is. It's possible people will begin to understand them from their point of view and now even help them with the way out that everybody will buy into.
Let me come to you now, Doris, and I'll ask you the same question. We looked at a certain analysis earlier on, and Jamaica dragged their program for almost a year until a time that the country said we are not touching domestic, some parts, of course, domestic was used, but some aspects of the economy before they got the program running with the IMF. Should we get to that point where we would say, well, for domestic debt exchange program or some other programs, the IMF is required, we will not be able to pursue that. But IMF should still give us the money.
I think it's very interesting that you asked that question because, come to think of it, we haven't cited any program yet for the external bondholders. So it would be interesting for us to understand what makes us prioritize the domestic bondholders. Because when push comes to shove, we are the taxpayers. We are the ones that are going to sustain the domestic economy, the economy, for it to be on its feet. I don't think that we have to drag it. And I believe in efficiently using all resources, including time. And I believe that when you want buy-in and you want it quickly, you get people to see it from their side of the table. And so I would go for sitting together and together agreeing on how we should go about it. And I'm also curious why the focus on completing the domestic when we haven't tackled the external side of the bond exchange program. It will be interesting to see what we are able to get out of it. Another interesting point I want to make is the fact that with reference to the individual bondholders and then the pensioners, they constitute 20% of the portfolio. And if we are assuming that we get a general buy-in and we are aiming for an 80% success rate, if we have the pensioners and individual bondholders out, that means we are already likely missing that target performance rate of 80%. So it's something that we need to look at. But like Doc said, Frimpong, I believe that we may sit here and tout all sorts of ideas, but when you sit together and you are listening to each other, you may create a new innovative program that is the solution that addresses everybody's need. Now, I know there are meetings happening in pockets. Today we meet the bankers, tomorrow we meet the pensioners, and then maybe we'll meet the individual bondholders. We are not listening to each other in the same room, and there may be some reporting and trying to address. So how about, I'm coming back to a point I made earlier, how about we all sit down together and we try to find what is the way forward in this? I believe there is a way, and I believe firmly that it's in us sitting together in the same room, all the parties sitting together to come up with a solution.
Right. So let me. In fact, my time is up, and my producers are on my neck. But let me ask you: if finance minister calls you today, are you going to cut the picketing?
Yeah. We are saying if we don't get any positive.
But now that there is an extension of the program to the 31st of the month, if you don't hear from him, but I mean some negotiations will some informally begin, are you going to stop?
What we are saying that we believe that we will be called. We believe that it's because he himself knew he was going to extend this period, so he has time to meet us. So that's what we believe we'll do.
But what do you think finally that you would be taking off? Pensioners will be taken off. You have that strong belief that you will be taken off.
That I have there. I think it was an oversight.
If you are not taking off, what happens?
Nothing is going to be said that it's not be taken off. The facts remain that you cannot treat that vulnerable group in that manner.
Doc, your final words, and I will introduce your book.
My final words are that, look, we better come together and save time. I think we are all running against time. And the more we delay, the more expensive it gets.
I should have done this from the beginning, but we are at the end of the program, and this book is from Dr. Richmond Kwame Frimpong. And I was looking to see the Financial Literacy Africa, but it says New Year, fresh starts. If you can pick it, how to make the new year your best year ever. If you have been watching Metro TV for at least the past 2 years, then you know that this is a book to get. And this is a book to guide yourself and your financial planning throughout the year. It is not just for the month of January, or you don't just buy it from the beginning of the year, but at any point at all in your life. This is Good Money Habits in Bad Economic Times. I haven't read this yet, but for Fresh Start, a new start, I can talk about it. good money habits in bad economic times. Doc, 30 seconds, and I can close.
Look, this is
one.
this is the best time to know what to do with money, and it's in there. Just
Best
find
time
it.
to know what to do with money. I'm sure once you grant us the opportunity to go through New Year fresh start, we'll be able to talk about it. So my guests tonight have been Dr. Edu Enchi, convener, pensioner bondholders forum, Dr. Doris. I have always referred to her as Dr. Doris Ayati is fellow Chartered Institute of Bankers, and Dr. Richmond Kwame from Pony is investment advisory consultant. My name is Kwesi Free, and this is The Bottom Line. Good evening. Thank you very much for watching.